What's up, gentlemen? Today we're going to talk about the myth of the midlife crisis. After all, this is midlife manhood, right? So let's think about this myth, this thing called the midlife crisis that all of society thinks that men go through as they get older and as they start hitting about the age of really 40 to 50. You know the stereotype. Stereotype goes that it says men begin to decide they want to go to the gym and lose weight. They want to go out and buy a sports car. And probably the one that really makes everyone the most upset is that they say men want to go out and find a younger, hotter wife. Well, let me just point out a little bit of inconsistency that we have as a society. First of all, we don't really call it a midlife crisis for women when they hit that age. But yet we call it menopause. And of course, many even joke around and say, well, it means men on pause. Ha ha ha. Well, I just think it's really inconsistent that we view a stage of life that both men and women go through when they start pushing toward the midpoint of their lifetime, where they start thinking about their mortality in a whole different way. And we kind of joke around. We even come up with medications in order to help women with that. We acknowledge the fact of mood swings, and we actually even have books about it, describing on how really all the people in their life, and I know because I can tell you, my mother even had me read a book when I was a teenager, even explaining a little bit of what she was going through. But what was really interesting is that I did not get the same from my dad. Now, my father certainly didn't give me a book talking about, hey, this is what I'm going through as I'm reaching 40. And if anything that my father did was really kind of being shamed. He was being shamed for it. It was like, oh, you see, your dad just went and bought that new hot Mustang. Yeah, you must be hitting that midlife crisis. My father went and got a gym membership. Only time in my life I remember him having one. Must be because he's hitting the midlife crisis. So I noticed the inconsistency, and now that I'm at that age, I crack up at it even more. But really, let's talk about it. It's really a myth. Because I think when we really analyze it, and I can certainly now say for being close to 50 myself, is that what we think is really a midlife crisis is really a midlife point where you start looking back at where you came from and you look at where you're at. And I think two things happen. One, it may be regret. And number two, it may be a sense of urgency that I don't know how much longer I have on this planet. But however much time I have, I better maximize it as much as I possibly can. And so you look back, maybe especially back in the old days, and when I say old days, I'm even talking about the 1990s in some cases, where you got married and you were 20, 25, certainly well under 30 years of age. And so now 20 years goes by and you look back and you realize all of the things that you put on hold, that you just said, I do not need to do X, Y, and Z because I'm focused on my family. I'm making sure we go to church every Sunday. I'm making sure that the kids are well taken care of. And most of all, I'm making sure that this woman that I've married is going to be set and that she will need nothing. Or even if she does need something, that we work on it together. But the reason why it's considered a midlife crisis, or why men may change their behavior when they get to that point, is because when they do look back and they look at the sacrifices that they made, on one end they wonder, was it really worth it? And on the other end, they say, well, I don't know if it was or not, but I know I now have a limited amount of time, so I have to do what I have to do to try to live maybe a way that I didn't get a chance to live those years prior. Now, of course, people look back and they say, well, that means the man's just being immature. Why is he going back trying to have his second childhood? Why is he going to try to relive those years? He's a mature man now. And of course, there's again a little bit of an inconsistency there, because we have movies like How Stella Got Her Groove Back, showing that many times we even create terms now like a cougar, where a woman can go back and try to relive that. Don't believe me? Talk to some single guys that are over 40 that go to the clubs, and they'll tell you quite a bit about some of the women that they run into there, or talk to some of them on those dating apps. And really, there are no shortage of women going back trying to recapture those years as well. Not just to mention, just think about even some of the ladies you may see in church that are still rocking those 1980 hairstyles that, are definitely going out of style, out of fashion. Their fashion is kind of played out, but you know what? They're still out there trying to catch. In other words, again, there's really no difference between men and women when it comes to this. It just seems as one is shamed for what they do and the other one is applauded. But the main point that I want to talk to you guys about is that, first of all, don't be ashamed of looking back from where you came from, analyzing where you're going. For many of you, that might be the first time in your life that you've even done so. I can tell you, as a man who has kids that are still, I'll say, right around that 30 and under age range, one of the things that I've stressed with all of my boys, and I call them boys as they're my boys, but really my men. The thing that I stress with them is don't live a life of regret. Think about what you want to be doing in your future. If you want to avoid having a so-called midlife crisis, that starts when you begin to plan your life in your teens. That definitely begins when you are in your 20s. Live a life where you no longer have to be my age and look back and wonder, was it all worth it? Would I marry her all over again? Would I want to have kids all over again? Would I want to have kids with her all over again? Now, of course, in an ideal world, just like our ownership of a car, we'd all like to look back and say, you know what, I would buy that car again. I really enjoyed owning that. But many times we look back at our lives and it's like, I am so glad to be done with this lemon. I'm so finished with that. And I think that's what we end up saying, maybe with the past years that we might have wasted, the years that we might have wasted in a relationship, we look back with regret. So no, I don't think there's a such thing as a midlife crisis. If anything, I think there's a midlife evaluation. And at that point that you have a midlife evaluation, that is usually when you start changing your behaviors. Now, how you do that? Well, I guess that depends on your moral ethics and your code. But I can tell you, certainly, I always laugh at one of the favorite books. My favorite book in the Bible is Proverbs, along with Ecclesiastes. So if anything, I'll say my favorite writer is Solomon. And when Solomon looks back and he just says, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. And I think that's what many men, when we get our age, that's what we look back and say. So much of this was just vanity. But at the end of the day, for you young men that are in your 20s, don't live a life of vanity. Live a life that means something. And I think regardless of your religious persuasion, the things that really mean something are the things that matter to you. The reason why I'm going to be doing this show is simply because I want to talk to guys about doing things that matter for them. I noticed early on, and certainly with myself and as well as the men that I'm raising, is that from a societal level, they're always being taught to defer and do things that matter and have value for someone else. But I want them to do things that matter and that have value to themselves. And that's what I want you to do if you're listening to me. Do things that matter and have value to you at every stage of your life. That way you have children. Why? Because you want to have children. You get married. Why? Because you want to get married. Again, so many guys get married because it sounds like the right thing to do at that time. So many guys get married because I've been dating her for quite some time. Well, she's still here and I think she's the best that I can get, so I might as well marry her. So many of you Christian guys got married because that was the first woman that you were able to have sex with. And so you feel like, well, I don't want to be promiscuous, so, I better go ahead and make sure I marry her. And yet, is that really the woman that you should be marrying? And that really goes for any man. Is that really the woman that you should be marrying? Are you marrying her for the right reasons? Are you having children for the right reasons? Or is it because you're just being worn down? Because maybe your new wife now is about to turn 30 and she is on you about having kids. Because see, her biological clock ticks. Yours ticks much more slowly. So much more slowly. You really can't even perceive it. And so at the end of the day, prepare for your midlife evaluation. What I want you to do today is begin to think, how can you be prepared for your midlife evaluation that you're going to have? You're going to have. We wouldn't be talking and having this thing in our culture of saying a midlife crisis if it wasn't for the fact that all men are going to hit that stage if you live long enough. You're going to have that midlife evaluation. How you live today in your 20s and 30s will impact how you evaluate how far you have been able to go in your 40s and in your 50s. And for you guys like me that are in your 40s and in your 50s, let me know in the comments below, when you look back and evaluate the life, the years, the trail that you've gone down, how do you evaluate it? Do you view it positively? Certainly, many men go out and they get on, nowadays at least, we can kind of treat ourselves with testosterone replacement therapy. That's a great thing. That's something that 20 years ago you definitely couldn't do. So that certainly helps. And there are hormonal changes, just as they are with women. That certainly happens. So I'm not discounting that at all. And certainly, guys, if you're over 40, you need to be going to get on TRT if your levels are low. And men, you need to go, if you're in your 20s and maybe 30s, at least go find a baseline level of where you're at today to determine if you're really low when you get into your 40s and 50s from where you were when you were younger. So yes, there are hormonal changes that happen with men, and we can't deny that. But those hormonal changes doesn't make a man become immediately a dog and he's running out here in the street. No, that's not it at all. What it is, those hormonal changes, you start looking at yourself, you feel weaker, you get a little bit more scary. You now have to buy a gun, and you don't buy a gun necessarily because you're into guns. Maybe you buy a gun because you realize, wow, you've gained 50, 100 pounds from your quote unquote fighting weight of your 20s. And now you look back and you think, when I go out, if I had to get into a tussle, I don't know if I can't beat half of these dudes around here. Maybe you start having some health problems. And maybe you realize that in the midst of your health problems, the woman that you were there to help with through pregnancy, or the family that you might have really destroyed your body providing for, especially if you had a manual labor job or were in the military, your body is now beaten down. And everybody else's body is doing great and wonderful. But yet people look at you like, well, you're always a strong one. Why can't you do it? And of course, worst case scenario, maybe you've had everything taken away from you after a divorce. And then now you look back and there's just so much regret. And many men do. They go out, I need that sports car now. I need to buy that ride. I never had it before. And we all feel that way. I think it's certainly nothing wrong with sacrificing for your family in order to send kids to school, provide for them. And then when they get older, you do have extra money in the budget. That does not make you immature for wanting the sports car. Maybe if you had that little 2-seater convertible that you had to give up because you got married and had kids. You know, there is an element of maturity in there, no doubt about that. And there's nothing wrong with returning back to that when time and the budget allows. So what I just want to say in closing, have that midlife evaluation. If you're young, I want you to have that midlife evaluation. Think about how you want that conversation to take place with yourself. And I want you to start living that way today. If you're now in your 40s and in your 50s, how did you handle your midlife evaluation? What would you tell young men now to get prepared for with theirs? Because I'm going to tell you, live the best life you can for yourself. Take care of yourself. And I think that's the hardest thing for men to do. Many men did not even make it past their 40s and into their 50s. And we all say, well, it's because men don't go to the doctors. They're too stubborn. They just don't want to go in and be vulnerable in front of a doctor. Maybe it's the fact that at no point in time in a man's life is anyone actually taking care of him. So in that area, why does he feel like he needs to take care of himself all of a sudden? It doesn't change. The same guy that goes into work every single day and brags about how I do not miss days. I do not miss days. I've worked for this company for 5, 10, 20 years, have never missed a day of work. Yeah, for certainly we can say now it doesn't do well when they just only present you with a severance check and say, peace out, bye, we're in a recession, it's time for you to go. You see, that didn't necessarily pay off. But the point is, we do take pride in showing up every day. And if it means beating ourselves down in order to provide and get things done, that's just what we do. And sometimes when we need to be taken care of, and I don't necessarily mean be taken care of as in I need someone to come here and do everything for me. I mean, I need to go get my health checked. Maybe I'm having some prostate issues. Maybe I'm having some back pain. Maybe I'm having some heart flutters. I probably should go get that checked. But you know what? It's nobody gonna help me. I can't miss work. If I have to get, off some time off, what are we gonna do about the bills, etc.? And so that's why a lot of men don't go to the doctors. So that's what I mean by living for yourself. Men begin to go do that. And that is the midlife evaluation that I think we can be proud of. That when you do get to that point, that certainly doesn't mean that you may end up being a selfish man of, well, now you just don't want to get married and have kids. No, see, ladies, it doesn't work that way. If anything, when you start taking care of yourself in your 20s and in your 30s, you do know what you want, when you want it, why you want it, how you want it, and why you want it. Hope I didn't say why twice. Well, if I did, you get the point. So then you can make proper decisions. And when you do have that point where you look back over your life in your 40s and 50s, you say, I did this my way, the old Frank Sinatra's way. This is actually what I wanted to do. I have the woman in my life because why? This is the woman that I wanted. I have the kids in my life and I've done X, Y, and Z for them. Why? Because this is exactly what I've wanted. I live where I want to live. Why? Because, well, this is where I want to live. And that is a way to get to your midlife evaluation and then feel like, wow, I've done something over these years. That'll be it. All right. Let me know how you feel, maybe how your midlife evaluation was in the comments below.